How does a woman like that stay with him? A young voice rose above the bar chatter, late on a Friday night in Charlotte, North Carolina. My name is Ryan Emerson. I am 54. 2 decades in uniform taught me to spot trouble before it lands on my doorstep. 3 college kids had been whispering and pointing at my wife and me all night, their smirks lit under the dim lights. Alice squeezed my hand beneath the table. She's 49, but most people assume she's in her 30s. Tonight, her blue dress caught the glow and her auburn hair shimmered in the bar. After 26 years, she still leaves me breathless. "Ready to head out, honey?" I asked evenly. The loud one, a blonde with a backward cap, rose as we walked near their booth. His 2 friends stepped in beside him as if he were leading a parade. He wore a university sweatshirt and barely looked 160 soaking wet. "Seriously, though," he said, loud enough for half the bar, "what is a woman like her doing with you?" I stopped. Alice's hand clung to my arm. Eyes around the room turned towards us. Pete, the bartender, froze mid-wipe of a glass, watching it unfold. "She probably takes care of him like a nurse," the second kid smirked, stocky in a school jacket. "Come with us, darling, we can show you what real energy feels like." The third, taller, greasy-haired, stepped in front of us, blocking the way out. "Grandpa probably can't even keep up anymore," he laughed. I studied them. Soft hands, designer jeans, boys who had never felt a real fight, just movie toughness without the scars. "Yeah, sure, kid," I said, calm and steady. Alice knew that tone. I used it with rookies who thought they knew better. Patient, measured, dangerous. The blonde mistook it for weakness. His chest swelled like a rooster ready to crow.
"What does that mean, old man?" he barked. "Nothing," I replied. "We are leaving." But I could feel them follow. The air in the room had shifted, tense. Pete met my eyes and shook his head, as if sorry for what might come. Something told me this night was not finished yet. 20 years ago, I would have acted fast. Back then, I was a sergeant teaching combat drills at camp and had no patience for arrogance. But Alice changed me. She showed me real strength is restraint. I met her in 1998 after my 3rd deployment. She worked as a nurse, caring for men who carried more than their bags home. The first time I saw her, she was holding a veteran's hand while he wept. That moment told me she was different. A year later, we married. Alice wanted children, but it never came. Instead, we poured into each other. She stood by me through the hard return to civilian life. I backed her through nursing school and her master's program. Now she leads the trauma unit at the city hospital. Tonight was meant for celebration. She had just been promoted. We came to the bar where our first date once happened. Same booth, same Friday crowd, same bartender who never forgot us. Yet as we walked toward the exit, those kids followed, their laughter sharp. The night was shifting, and I knew trouble waited outside. My instincts were never wrong. Alice's grip tightened. She sensed it too. We were about to face more than words, and the quiet in me began to stir. I had promised her no fights tonight, but promises bend under pressure, and pressure was building fast. Pete's eyes followed us to the door. His silence was louder than any warning. The night had only just begun. Back when we were broke and hungry, those kids had watched us the whole night. I saw the way their chatter stopped when Alice shrugged off her coat at the table. They nudged each other and tried to hide their smiles like boys with a secret. The blonde kept craning his neck to get another look at her like she was on display. I had seen that stare before, in foreign bars, when drunk men thought entitlement gave them a right to take what was not theirs. It always ended badly for them. Alice noticed too, but she handles being looked at better than most people. 26 years, and she still turns heads wherever we go. Usually I take that as a compliment, but tonight felt off. "They're just kids," she whispered. "Ignore them," I said. But I heard their talk. Fragments floated over our appetizer. "Wasted on an old man, and she must be desperate for something real," they said. That kind of talk crosses a line for me. The blonde got up to go to the restroom and had to pass our table on the way. He slowed down and checked her out. Then he winked at her, like he owned the show. Alice looked away, and for the first time all night she seemed uncomfortable. That was enough for me. We were leaving. Not because I feared 3 college boys, but because she did not deserve their trash at her celebration. I should have known they wouldn't let it end there. The parking lot was low light and quiet. Street lamps cast long bars of shadow. We were halfway to my truck when I heard steps behind us on the asphalt. "Hey, where are you going?" the blonde called. His voice bounced off the cars and brick. "We weren't finished with you," he said. I stopped. Alice squeezed my hand. In 26 years, she has seen me handle only a few fights, each one small compared to the things I have done. "Ray," she said quietly, "let's just go." I turned and saw all 3 standing there, under the weak lot lights, like kings. The blonde had his phone out, recording like he expected fame from a short clip of us.
The stocky kid in the jacket smiled and said, "We think your wife should try real men." The tall, thin one laughed and added more. Something snapped inside me like a switch. Not fury, just a change in setting. From civilian Ray to Staff Sergeant Emerson. Alice saw the shift in my shoulders. "Ray, it's okay," she whispered again. "These boys just want a show," I said. The blonde stepped forward and sneered. "Dance. What does that even mean?" he asked. I set my keys in Alice's palm and said, "You followed us out because you think you are tough. Fine, one at a time then." I shrugged off my jacket and folded it. The motion was quiet and controlled, like preparing recruits for demonstration. "All right," I said, rolling my sleeves up. "Do you want to dance one at a time or not?" They laughed and eyed each other. The blonde pocketed his phone and cracked his knuckles, like a boy pretending to be older than he was. "You serious, old man?" he mocked. "You want to fight all 3 of us?" "One at a time," I repeated, "unless you are scared." Pride is what gets young men hurt more than skill. Alice stepped back toward the truck and watched. She knows what I can do, though it has been years since I needed it. In the Corps, I taught defensive moves to men half my age. I showed them how to stand and how to win without spite. That training sits under my skin. I could feel the timing in my hands. The first boy stepped forward with a swagger that screamed practice, not power. He swung at me like a punch from a movie. I moved like a man who has taught many times before. Not fast, showy, but exact. His momentum carried him past my guard. A short turn and a controlled hold ended the dance before it became a scene. He hit the pavement and cursed, then froze. The other 2 looked shocked, not angry. Pride makes for quick lessons and slow learning. I offered the boy a hand up. "Get up and think about that," was all I said. The boy scrambled away, rubbing his knee like a tale he will tell in class. To read balance, timing, and breath. How momentum gives away a plan before a hand even moves. The set of the shoulders told me more than their words ever could. The blonde rolled his neck and shook out his arms like he was about to sprint. The other 2 spread wide, thinking numbers would carry them through this. They did not know that 20 years of training stays with you long after the uniform is folded away at home. The blonde came first, just like I expected. Boys lead with ego before they lead with sense. He shouted about respect and swung a wild right meant to end things fast. He thought power would do the job. I watched the wind-up like a slow tide,
The shift to the back foot, the dip of the shoulder, the eyes closing on the mark. His whole frame coiled and loud, telegraphing the story before the strike even left his hand. In the service, we called it slow-motion Sunday, when adrenaline clears the glass and you see each beat as if it hangs in the air. I slid left just enough. His fist rushed past my ear and kept going. With every ounce of force he loaded into it, he had bet everything on contact, so the empty space took the bet for him and paid him back in lost balance. He hit nothing but air, and physics did the rest. His feet tangled as he reached to grab at the night and found only wind. I did not need to shove. I simply stepped aside and watched him meet the brick wall beside the bar. The thud echoed hard like fruit dropped on stone. He crumpled, and the stocky kid shouted his name, running to him, but the blonde was finished. He slid down the wall, dazed with a red stream at his nose, staring at nothing and trying to count what went wrong. "My face," he muttered through split lips. "You broke my face." I shook my head and brushed dust from my sleeve and said, "You ran into a wall. I just moved out of your way." The stocky kid, who the blonde had called Tyler, looked at me with new caution. Some swagger gone, but pride
Still pushing him forward, he was not ready to let the lesson end. "You got lucky with him," Tyler said, peeling off his jacket. "I played ball in school." "Good for you," I said, and held my ground. He dipped his shoulder and charged, like a tackle drill on a dusty field. But this was not a scrimmage, and I was not a rival team. I was a man who had spent years teaching close quarters work to men who needed it to live. It would have been funny if it were not so expected. 2 steps out, I caught his arms, let his speed write the story, and turned his line sideways with a pivot. Simple principle: do not meet force head-on. Send it somewhere else and let it cool. Tyler spun off path and learned about surprise the hard way. He slammed into the big dumpster by the back door, and the metal rang like a bell in the night. His own speed had not finished the story. The lip caught him at the waist, and his legs pitched up over the edge. "Help!" came a muffled voice from inside. "I'm stuck," he said, "somewhere in the bags." I glanced over the rim. He was wedged upside down with his shoes pointing at the sky, his jacket twisted over his head, and his legs kicking like a trapped bug. The scene would have been comic if not for the lesson it carried. "Patience and leverage," I said as I straightened my shirt. "2 things the service drilled deep, and they don't wash out." The tall, thin kid started to backpedal. I had heard them call him Jake. He kept looking from me to his friends, one slumped against brick, one thrashing in the bin, and me standing there, steady and quiet. "You can't do this," he blurted. "This is crazy. You can't just attack people." "Attack?" I raised an eyebrow and let the word hang. "Son, I did not touch either of your friends. They wrote their own endings." Jake pulled out his phone with shaky hands. "I'm calling the police," he said. "Good call," I answered. "Make sure to mention how 3 young men followed a married couple into a dark lot looking for trouble."
A married couple into a dark parking lot, shouting threats loud enough to carry. That was his mistake. Pride kept him there. Instead of walking off, he tried to prove he had something left to win in front of the crowd. He spoke about calling the cops, but his hands told another story. He wound up hoping to land a cheap shot, thinking I would not notice the swing. But service life trains your eyes, peripheral vision sharp as a blade. He came wide, a haymaker aimed high. The punch meant for the side of my head. I dropped low and heard the crack. His fist found the metal post behind me. Knuckles against iron rang out. The echo rolled through the lot. His scream followed, sharp and broken, a sound higher than his bravado. Neighbors would remember that cry. He cradled his hand to his chest. eyes watering, pain written across his face. "My hand," he shouted. "You broke my hand." "No, son," I said. "You broke your own hand. I moved. You struck steel. Simple lesson. Choices carry weight." The noise pulled people from the bar. Pete, the bartender, stood at the door, his head shaking as if he had seen this before. Others raised their phones to record, capturing the mess these boys made. The blonde was slumped against brick, blood across his shirt like a badge of shame. The stocky one still upside down in trash, arms weak from struggling. Jake sat in the dirt crying, a sorry picture of false courage. He begged someone to call help. Voices from the crowd answered, "Already done." Sirens would not be far away. Alice stepped to me, calm as ever. She handed me my jacket, her eyes steady. That look I remembered from years ago, when she first saw me for who I was, not just a job, not just the uniform, but the man who stood unshaken in storms. She slid the jacket to my shoulders. Her eyes said everything words could not. It was the same spark from our first night, not the years, not the work, not the age.
"But the strength she always believed in," I asked her softly. "Are you all right?" She smiled. "Perfect," she said, her arm linked tight with mine. Then the broken boy tried again. He yelled to the crowd, calling me an attacker. "The old man assaulted us," he cried. But the crowd knew better. Pete stepped forward. "I saw it all," he said. "You three picked this fight, not him. He never threw a strike." Others joined in with their phones, showing the truth frame by frame. Boys hurting themselves on their own pride. The woman who called for help spoke up. "These men walked into their own ruin. This man just dodged and moved, nothing more, nothing less." Jake's face drained of color, his version collapsing around him. He stammered, "He must have done something." Pete shook his head. "You boys did this. All the damage was yours, not his." Sirens grew louder, flashing lights near. Alice held my arm. "We will give our side." I nodded, already planning on it. The truth had found them out. They wanted an easy mark. Instead, they tore themselves apart in front of witnesses and cameras that would not forget. Alice pressed close, her voice steady. "The night changed, but we did not. We were still who we had always been, together, stronger than whatever faced us." Behind us, their humiliation deepened. Ahead of us, our bond remained untouched. Tyler crawled free, reeking of garbage, his jacket torn, his pride worse. The blonde groaned against the wall. Jake sobbed, holding his broken hand. They whispered threats, but no conviction. The fight had ended before it began. I told them it was over, and it had been over from the start. Sirens filled the lot, red and blue flashing, medics and officers stepping out. The boys faced care and questions, not glory. Their night closed in shame, while Alice and I stood steady in truth, together as always, ready to walk on.
The crowd could see the truth setting in, faces pale and bravado gone. They would have to explain later how 3 college boys lost to a man twice their age who never threw a punch. Alice leaned closer, her voice steady. "Not the night we planned," she said, "but maybe the night we were meant to have." I nodded, knowing she was right. The officers stepped in, taking statements. One spoke with calm authority, asking us to share what we had seen. I told the story clear and direct, no more and no less than truth. Alice stood firm beside me, her hand never leaving mine. The officers scribbled notes and nodded. Witnesses showed their recordings. The evidence was undeniable on screen. 3 boys chasing trouble and finding it. Instead of the victory they expected, they fell to their own pride. One bleeding, one broken, one humiliated. The officer asked about my background. I mentioned years of training and service, basic defense, nothing more, nothing less. He nodded, writing it down carefully. Alice's grip told me she was proud. Her smile carried more weight than words. Across the lot, the medics worked quickly, stitching one, wrapping another. The third sat shivering in shame. An officer shook his head at the scene. "Boys," he said, "this is on you. You chased a fight and lost to yourselves." The crowd murmured agreement, their phones still recording every detail, their humiliation permanent now. Alice whispered in my ear softly, "Can we finally go home?" "Soon," I said. "The officer is finishing up." We answered final questions clearly. Then we're told we were free to leave. Our part was done. The truth was clear. Alice slid into the truck seat, her eyes shining in the dim light. I started the engine quietly, leaving chaos behind us in the lot. The boys shouted weak protests, but no one listened anymore.
Their night ended with sirens and shame. Ours ended with each other. I glanced at Alice. She smiled back. Still the same woman who stole my heart. Years had not dimmed that light. If anything, nights like this sharpened it. The streets grew quiet as we drove, her hand resting gently on mine. I thought about how strength is measured, not by fists, but by restraint, not by rage, but by calm control. Tonight proved that again. Alice looked at me, her voice warm. "You still surprise me after all these years." I smiled. "You keep me steady. Without you, I might have chosen a different path." She leaned closer and kissed my cheek. The city lights glowed on her face, reminding me how lucky I was. We passed the place of our first date, the memory clear even after decades. Back then, I saw the same spark in her eyes, a spark that had only grown brighter. She had been my anchor and my light, and tonight proved it once again. The road stretched ahead, calm and empty, our future as steady as the drive home. Alice rested her head on my shoulder, softly breathing in peace at last. My hand on the wheel, my heart full. We had faced the night and come through. Not broken, but stronger, together. Outside, the world carried on as normal. Inside the truck, it felt timeless. The hum of the engine steady like a lullaby, her warmth pressed against my side. I thought about how strength is measured again. Not by fists, but by restraint. Not by rage, but by calm control. Tonight proved that again. Alice looked at me, her voice warm. "You still surprise me after all these years." I smiled. "You keep me steady. Without you, I might have chosen a different path." She leaned closer and kissed my cheek. The city lights glowed on her face, reminding me how lucky I was. We passed the place of our first date, the memory clear even after decades. Back then, I saw the same spark in her eyes, a spark that had only grown brighter. She had been my anchor and my light, and tonight proved it once again. The road stretched ahead, calm and empty, our future as steady as the drive home. Alice rested her head on my shoulder, softly breathing in peace at last. My hand on the wheel, my heart full. We had faced the night and come through. Not broken, but stronger, together. Outside, the world carried on as normal. Inside the truck, it felt timeless. The hum of the engine steady like a lullaby. Her warmth pressed against my side. I thought about the years still ahead and felt ready for every one of them. Because of her, because of us. Our story not done, only stronger. As we left the flashing lights behind, the night sky opened wide. Stars above like silent witnesses to a bond unshaken by age or trial. Alice closed her eyes with a smile, and I drove on, steady into tomorrow, the chaos fading, the love enduring. Sometimes the best victories are quiet. Sometimes they are just holding on to the person that matters most.
"They will remember this night," Alice said as we pulled from the lot. "Good," I answered. "Maybe next time they pause and think before running their mouths." I had a feeling their troubles were just beginning after tonight. 2 weeks later, Alice slid her phone over. "You need to see this," she said, trying not to laugh over breakfast. The clip had millions of views across apps. Someone stitched the angles together, clean, added slow motion and running comments. The title called it "Three College Bros Schooled by a Marine Grandpa," without a single punch thrown. There I was, stepping aside while one met brick. Then the dumpster dive replayed with music. And finally the meter mishap in freeze frames, his scream echoing over the cut. "It is everywhere," Alice said, scrolling. Comments rolling on every platform. People even turned it into memes overnight. The lines were brutal and sharp. "Imagine losing to basic physics," one person wrote under the clip. Another said, "They talk tough and learned what real control looks like." The laughs were loud, but the fallout was louder. Word spread fast on campus. Students matched names, faces, and chapters. Profiles and photos were public, and the story moved on rails. The university opened a review. Harassment off campus still stains the brand. Policy does not look kindly on that. Suspensions were on the table, and one of them already teetered on probation. This could tip him out for good. Their house put them on hold, too. Distance was the new rule. Friends who cheered them last month now kept quiet or looked away. "Look at this one," Alice said. "A classmate says they used to strut around. Now people laugh when they walk by." The clip turned into a lesson. Security teams played it in talks. Instructors used it to show how training can end danger without throwing a punch.
3 young men set out to mock and ended up schooling the internet instead. Weeks of jokes at their expense and a long memory to follow. 6 months later, we returned to the bar for our anniversary and a quiet meal. Pete met us with a grin. "The famous couple," he teased, "drinks on the house tonight." Our old booth even had a nickname now. People called it the Emerson Table. A small plaque on the wall read, "Respect earned and lessons learned." Over dinner, Alice shared updates. Her hospital network hears a lot. One of the boys transferred out after his chapter cut him loose. The scar from the wall needed work, a daily reminder of that night. Another left school entirely. The video cost him more than pride. Internships vanished fast, and calls stopped getting returned. The third stayed enrolled, but under a cloud and a warning, probation inked in black and white. He kept his head down and moved fast between classes. No more swagger in the halls. Pete topped off our glasses. "Here's to quiet nights," he said, "and to couples who look out for each other." We clinked and smiled and let the noise fade. The booth felt like the first time again, familiar and steady. People nodded as they passed, not because of the video, but because calm earns its own respect. Alice reached across and took my hand. "Some nights test you," she said, "and some nights prove you." I squeezed back and nodded. We had been both tested and proven, together, as always. We finished dinner and laughed easy, then thanked Pete and stepped into the night. The air felt lighter than before, like the city itself exhaled. We walked to the truck, hand in hand, the past behind us, the road ahead, wide open and quiet, like a promise. Football hopes on a scholarship were gone. His parents were stunned when the clip hit their feeds, shared by nearly everyone they knew online. He moved back home, took a grocery job, and tried to rebuild day by day. Jake carried the hardest fallout of all. The consequences landed heavy. His busted hand needed more than one surgery and long rehab time. The injury ended any dream he had of playing ball for a living. Then came the expulsion letter. One night erased both paths at once, sports and school gone in a blink. "Do you ever feel for them?" Alice asked as she cut into her salmon. I watched the Friday crowd and thought of the night they wrote their lesson. Couples on dates, families at dinner, older folks like us enjoying the calm. "They chose their path," I said. "Actions bring results. I only hurried the lesson they were bound to learn one way or another. It was coming sooner rather than later." Alice smiled and raised her glass. "To consequences," she said. "To consequences," I replied, and drank. We stepped out when dinner was done. I held the door for her and watched her walk into the same parking lot where 3 young men met a hard truth. The lamps threw the same long shadows, but the air felt different now, quiet and settled, like a chapter closed. They learned the world does not hand out respect just because you demand it, and strength is not about picking on someone you think is weaker. Their public stumble followed them from screens into daily life, costing friends, chances, and standing in the circles they cared about. The clip lived on as a record of a bad call, one search away for a long time. Future bosses and dates could find it and draw their own lines from there. Their try at playing the victim failed once witness clips set the story straight. They were left with more than bruises. They lost credibility, too. Families, friends, and schools saw the truth and reacted. Some lessons echo long after the moment that set them in motion. 20 seconds of poor choices can bend the shape of a future for years. They learned that the quiet win is the one earned without a strike, and that the strongest answer sometimes is calm steadiness, not a fist. We walked on together and left the old noise behind us, where it belonged.